Okay, these are some quotes. I've just spent the last month going around to our First Wave site talking to commissioners because now they're funding it and I want to find out what their aspirations are. And these are some quotes that I've heard in these visits. And it's been a very interesting process. You walk into some and they say, yep, we love it, we know it's working for our families, yes, we're going to keep sustaining, we're going to keep funding this team, and yes, we want to be in the RCT because we want to know what it's doing for our children locally. Or people say, yes, but we don't want to be in the RCT, it's too much hassle and we think we've got enough evidence anyway. And then you get into these conversations about, these are literal quotes, well, there's no proof that it works, even though we've presented all of this evidence. I don't believe in RCTs. I think they're bad for people. We don't do RCTs here because you've got a control arm and it's not ethical to have a control arm where they're not getting service. We don't see why it has to be a nurse, so we're not going to fund the team. Why should we fund the testing of this programme? It should be the government funding it. Why should we fund this as a health service when the savings come to local authority and the criminal youth justice services? This has to go to another board before we can decide, and then it has to go to another board, and then it has to come back again, and then it has to go to another board before we decide. So nobody makes a decision. And I met one commissioner who said, we've got joint commissioning board, we've been meeting for 18 months. And I said, oh yeah, that's great, what have you commissioned? Well, nothing yet. So I thought they were a commissioning board, really. And that thing about we can do our own thing, not invented here and not invented by me here, is quite a powerful thing, and because it's American. We don't do American because it's all to do with George Bush and the Iraq War, and we don't like American stuff. And what I sense behind this is that a lot of the commissioning battles take place in the marginal activity, don't they? You've got, as a PCT, you'll have like 90% of the budget or more going into what was commissioned last year and the year before, and it's going to be, because we can't actually unpick this huge acute hospital that takes our resources. We're going to really argue about the FMP on the margins. And some of the battles between commissioners and providers are acted out on the 10% completely inappropriate, really. And I think there's some key issues about people exercising power where they can say no when they can't say no in other places. I think this programme also creates a lot of anxiety for people, emotional anxiety. It's you can tell these stories, and we went to one place and the local fire chief listened to this and he had tears in his eyes listening to the stories about the nurses. Other people find that very uncomfortable because it connects deeply in themselves, and when we all get anxious, we get defensive and we don't want this here, thank you, and it's all very too uncomfortable. Organisational anxiety about innovation, and this is a very different way of working, creates organisational anxiety, and so people say, we want more evidence, and however much data we give people, it's never quite enough. There's always another question people come back at. We now realise if you get into that cycle, it's like with clients. The more you say yes, but I can't do this, and I can't because of this, that you just can't end it, because actually what they're going to do is say no, because they feel ambivalent about it. And you have to hook into why people feel ambivalent about commissioning a programme like this. What we have is probably the best evidence-based programme for vulnerable children and families around prevention that addresses this really important work around neurological development in children in pregnancy in the first 2 years of life. And if it was a cancer drug, the public would be crying out for this if it was Herceptin. But we know from our discussions with commissioners, and I think particularly middle-level commissioners, what we find is that we have fantastic joint strategic commissioners who really want it and they're all signed up to it. But the person who has to put their hand in their pocket and pay for it is the person who says no or doesn't make a decision. And one of us, it's in a big, major urban city, and this has been going on for 4 months and they still haven't made a decision, and it goes from this one to that one, and there is the bureaucracy behind it. And I think it's understanding what's going on behind this, really, that I've been talking to you today made me think about, really, in a way that wasn't blaming people, but trying to understand where they're coming from. And when it works well, this seems to be what I see when it works well. You have people who want to make a difference. The reason we get out of bed in the morning and come to work, why we've chosen these vocational jobs, because of public service, and we want to make a difference. And we know that when we go out and there are people there who want to make a difference and have a passion for the most vulnerable babies and a passion for babies, will accept the evidence and will be passionate about commissioning this programme. It's taking responsibility seriously. I think, if services aren't being commissioned, then you have to take responsibility for the impact that's having on the public. And if health visitors are going around with caseloads of 500 or high level of need and not being effective, then the Commissioner has to take responsibility for the outcomes for the public. And I think we obfuscate that and put lots of layers in between, so actually the professional accountability is just as relevant if you're in commissioning than if you're doing hands-on work with families. And I think, for me, I feel accountable for babies' brains, that this programme's got to work because we're trying to really make a difference in the neurological development of very vulnerable babies. Knowing the science and understanding research. Being a researcher, we need to understand an RCT, a meta-level analysis, to know what's good research and what's bad research. Knowing your population, being able to count them and know where they are, knowing what they want. Valuing frontline staff. That's what I've learned from David Old, actually, is that we're all here on the backs of frontline staff and the relationships they have with their clients. That is what drives us all, and making that work. And it's about people, not processes. And I think we've just got bogged down in systems and processes, really, and we've lost sight about what we're all here for, I think, and the purpose. It's about being reflective. The best commissioners I have are reflective people who think about, why are we blocking this innovation? Why is it making our organisation anxiety? The feelings that it evokes, and people who are reflective about the purpose and can make hard decisions but have done it on a reflective basis. Translating strategic plans, which are all meaningful, into actually hard cash. Recognising this is a long game. None of us are in this for the next couple of years. This is a 10-year strategy. Commissioning is a 10-year strategy. And seeing your part in your contribution to the whole for children and families and society as a whole, and being attuned to new ideas. Strength-based working, all of this is motivation. This is a zeitgeist time for changing how we work with families, I think, and being aware of those ideas and some of the new thinkings around how we measure that. We're doing a lot of work because one of our roles is to keep building the evidence base. There's never enough evidence, and you just keep building it. And everything we do is about building our evidence base. We have a formative evaluation. Year 1 came out a couple of weeks ago. Randomised control trial that we're starting next year. The only government project with a randomised control trial, which is fantastic around this area, but very demanding, difficult. We have a database, so we know exactly what's going on out there, and we can monitor fidelity. We have a lot of projects to improve quality of delivery, and we have 20 new sites coming on. And these are my reflections, really. If you have evidence base, use it positively. I sit in so many rooms and saying where people always say there isn't evidence, therefore. And when there is evidence, those discussions are often, well, you might have that evidence, but we know. We don't work in a strength-based way in our public sector organisations, and neither do commissioners. It takes time to develop new programmes, and learn well and testing things. What's the evidence for commissioning that it's going to make a difference? We have to apply it to ourselves. Valuing appreciative inquiry methods. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there's a very good work around now called appreciative inquiry, which is how you do achieve change around people's strengths. And as organisations, we're now insisting that our sites do appreciative inquiry. So the questions they ask are, what are the behaviours we want to see more of? They don't ask, what's the problem, the behaviour we want to see less of? And because language constructs reality, that if you work in strength-based, people will go with you and develop and change. Continuing to build the evidence base, relational work, not technocratic. That evidence base doesn't mean we have to be technocratic all the time, that this is about relationships and how we work together, and the importance of evidence-based replication. So this is what we're doing to build our solid foundations for the future. I think there's limitations to evidence. It's research. It probably makes up, 25-30% of decision making. And it's almost as important to think what makes up the rest of our decision making as well as the research. And that's our beliefs and our passion and our learning from frontline staff and our reflections and our understanding of the science behind this work and our understanding of theory. So evidence-based, I've got the best evidence-based programme. I've been given a gift, and the Cabinet Office gave me this gift because they did all the original research to identify this programme. But even having this fantastic evidence-based programme, getting it commissioned, getting it sustainable in our public services is not as easy as you think it would be. Thank you.